Welcome to Life Stories, where we share tales of resilience, betrayal, and triumph. Today, we bring you the story of Emily Carter, a woman who dedicated 2 decades of her life to a company she helped build from the ground up. But when betrayal came from those she trusted the most, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. This is a story of revenge, empowerment, and the lessons learned when you realize your worth. Stay with us as we dive into Emily's journey and discover how she turned betrayal into her greatest victory. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to begin today's story. I never imagined that the very company I had poured my heart and soul into for the past 20 years would become the place that broke me. I had always believed in loyalty, in hard work, in giving my all to the work I did. When I first started at Carter & Associates, I was young and eager. It was a family-run company at the time, and I believed in its vision. I spent sleepless nights, sacrificed vacations, and pushed myself to my limits, all in the name of the company that I thought of as my second home. For 2 decades, I built relationships with clients, took on more responsibility, and did everything asked of me without question. In return, I hoped that the company would value me, that my loyalty would be recognized and appreciated. But there I was, standing in the executive conference room, listening to a conversation that shattered my entire world. I had come to the office to collect a few documents. I was on medical leave, exhausted from years of non-stop work. But I needed to catch up. I wasn't supposed to be there. I never expected to overhear what I did. The door to the conference room was slightly ajar, and as I reached for the handle, I heard it. "She's been here for 20 years. Richard King, my boss, said in his usual smooth but dismissive tone. "That's long enough, don't you think?" My heart sank. I froze, my hand still on the door, my mind racing. "She's dedicated, loyal, reliable." Another voice, Mitchell, the head of operations, offered, his voice tinged with some hint of respect. But Richard continued without missing a beat. Yes, but let's be honest. She's past her prime. We need someone younger, more dynamic, someone who can bring fresh energy." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had given everything to this company, my time, my energy, my personal life, and here they were, dismissing me as though I was nothing more than a cog in the machine. Easily replaced. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the betrayal burned like acid through my veins. I stepped back from the door, my hand still gripping the handle as I willed myself to stay quiet. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing I had overheard their plans. But every word they spoke hit me like a hammer. Richard went on, "My cousin deserves a shot. He's just out of business school. Sharp, full of ideas. He'll bring something new to the table." A few chuckles followed, and my stomach turned. And what about me? I wanted to scream. What about everything I had done for this company? But I remained silent. "Does she know yet?" one of the executives asked. Richard's laugh was cold. "Not yet. I'll let her know when she gets back from her little vacation." Vacation. I had been on medical leave. Not vacation. But the thought of them speaking about me as though I were some expendable asset, something to be discarded without a second thought, was too much to bear. I could feel my breath catch in my throat. How could they do this to me? How could they betray me so completely, so casually, after everything I had done for them? I slowly turned away from the door, my legs unsteady as I made my way back through the office. The world seemed to spin around me, and my heart felt like it had been torn from my chest. How could they? But then, as the shock started to settle, something inside me hardened. If they thought I was dispensable, I would show them just how irreplaceable I truly was. I had built this company from the ground up, and if they wanted to throw me away, they would see what happened when I turned my back on them. That night, I sat in my dimly lit apartment, the city outside humming with life. But I felt nothing but emptiness. I had given them everything, my loyalty, my time, my energy, and now I was nothing more than a name to be erased. The weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Daniel Walker. one of my closest colleagues at Carter and Associates. He had always been a good friend, and I trusted him more than anyone else at the company. The message was simple. Tessa, I need to show you something. Check your email. I hesitated for only a moment before opening my laptop. Inside my inbox was a video from Daniel. My heart raced as I clicked play, and the screen flickered to life. There they were, Richard King and the rest of the executives, sitting around that sleek conference table, discussing me as though I wasn't even human. Their voices filled the room, dismissing me as old, as past my prime. They talked about replacing me with Richard's cousin, and how no one would even remember me once he took over. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. No one will even remember her. Richard's voice echoed, and my vision blurred with tears. They didn't even care. The company I had dedicated my life to was already moving on without me. I exhaled sharply, my pulse steadying as anger replaced the sorrow in my chest. This wasn't just about being replaced. This was about the betrayal of trust, the exploitation of my loyalty, and I would make them regret it. I leaned back in my chair. The decision made. If I had built Carter and Associates, I could just as easily tear it down. The next few days felt like an eternity. Every morning, I put on my mask, walked into the office, and acted as though everything was fine. I smiled at my colleagues, laughed at their jokes, and carried on with my usual duties, all the while planning my next move. But inside, I was cold, calculating. I had no intention of just walking away quietly. No, they had made a mistake, and I would make sure they paid for it. It wasn't easy, keeping up appearances. Every time I walked past Richard's office or saw one of the executives in the hallways, I had to swallow down the rage that threatened to boil over. I was a professional, though, and I knew how to keep my emotions in check. But behind the calm exterior, I was already working on my revenge. I knew I needed someone on my side, someone who could help me take down Carter and Associates. I'd been thinking about it for a while, and one name kept coming to mind: Kevin Cole. Jeremiah had been a colleague of mine years ago, before he left Carter and Associates to start his own company. Back then, Richard had laughed at him, said he wouldn't last 6 months. Now, Jeremiah's firm was thriving, and if there was anyone who would love to see Carter and Associates fall, it was him. I hesitated for only a moment before picking up my phone and sending a message. Kevin, I have information that could give you the upper hand against Carter and Associates. Let's talk. I felt a strange sense of power as I pressed send. I didn't know what would come of it, but for the first time in a long time, I felt in control. Within minutes, I had a response. I didn't expect to hear from you. I'm listening. That was all I needed to hear. We arranged to meet the next evening at a cafe. I arrived early, sitting in a quiet booth in the back, my fingers tapping nervously on the table as I waited. I knew I was taking a huge risk. If anyone found out what I was planning, it could cost me everything. But I couldn't back down now. At exactly 7 p.m., Kevin walked in. He hadn't changed much, still tall, well-dressed, with those sharp, calculating eyes that I remembered so well. He sat down across from me, his expression unreadable. Tessa, he said smoothly, his voice holding a hint of surprise. This is unexpected. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. I assume you've heard that Carter and Associates is doing well. I began. He scoffed. For now. A small smile tugged at my lips. What if I told you I could change that? Kevin leaned back in his seat, his eyes narrowing slightly. Go on. For the next 30 minutes, I laid everything out for him, the weaknesses of Carter and Associates, the vulnerabilities that only someone on the inside would know, the backdoor dealings Richard had kept hidden, the contracts they'd secured unfairly, the loopholes in their financials. I told him everything. Kevin listened intently, his fingers steepled in front of his face. When I finished, he sat back, his eyes calculating. You could have walked away, he said quietly, his gaze never leaving mine. Why didn't you? I met his gaze, my voice steady but filled with quiet fury. Because I gave them my life, and they threw me away like I was nothing. A slow smile spread across Kevin's face. Then let's make sure they regret it. That was all I needed to hear. From that moment on, I was fully committed. Carter and Associates wouldn't know what hit them. I would watch as their empire crumbled from the inside out. For weeks, I worked in silence, like a ghost moving through Carter and Associates. I showed up at the office every morning, greeted my colleagues with a smile, and pretended everything was normal. No one suspected that I was the one feeding information to Kevin. No one knew that the very company I had spent 2 decades building was on the verge of falling apart. Behind the scenes, I kept my head low while orchestrating the beginning of their downfall. Every day, I fed Kevin crucial details, contracts, pricing strategies, negotiations, things that only someone at my level of experience would have access to. I watched as Kevin's firm, Cole and Carter Consulting, swooped in and took contracts that Carter and Associates had been confident they would win. The first blow came when Jeremiah's firm landed the Gibson contract, one that Carter and Associates had been working on for months. Richard and the executives were furious. I could see the tension in their meetings as accusations were thrown around. But I remained calm. The whispers of betrayal only made my resolve stronger. I had worked hard for every single contract Carter and Associates had secured. And now, with a few whispered secrets, I had handed those very contracts to Kevin on a silver platter. The tension was palpable in the office as the executives scrambled to explain the loss. Richard stormed into the conference room, his face red with barely contained rage, slamming his briefcase onto the table. "How did we lose the Gibson contract?" he barked. I sat at my desk, pretending to work, but inside, I was savoring every second of it. I knew the answer to that question. And so did everyone else. The information I had provided had made the difference. And now the cracks in Carter and Associates were starting to show. As the weeks passed, the situation grew worse for the company. Clients began pulling out of deals. Investors grew restless, and rumors of unethical business practices started to spread. I watched as Lawrence desperately tried to contain the damage. But the harder he fought, the faster his empire crumbled. Then, one afternoon, it all came crashing down. An anonymous whistleblower leaked a damning report about Carter and Associates' financial practices. The report spread like wildfire through the media. Stockholders demanded answers, and the press had a field day. It wasn't long before the company's reputation was in freefall. I could hardly contain my satisfaction. I had built Carter and Associates with my own hands, and now I was watching it burn to the ground. It felt good, knowing that all those years of sacrifice and loyalty had finally paid off in the most satisfying way possible. That evening, as I sat in my apartment, watching the news unfold, my phone buzzed. It was Daniel, one of the few people left at Carter and Associates who still spoke to me. "You hear about Gibson?" he asked, his voice low and cautious. "Hard to miss," I replied, my lips curling into a smile. "I don't think this was a coincidence," Daniel said, studying me carefully. "Something tells me you had a hand in this." I met his gaze, my heart steady. If I had been betrayed after 20 years of loyalty, I wouldn't just walk away quietly either. He smirked, leaning in closer. "So, if I were to help you, would you let me?" I smiled, the weight of the situation settling in. "I think you've been helping me all along." By the following week, the rumors about Carter and Associates were everywhere. Clients were leaving, investors were pulling their money out, and the company was slowly but surely falling apart. As I watched from the sidelines, I knew it was only a matter of time before everything Richard had built came crashing down. And then came the final blow. Lawrence called me. It was a moment I had been expecting. But now that it had come, I wasn't sure how to feel. He was desperate, and I could hear it in his voice. He needed me, and yet, I knew I would never go back to a place where I was unappreciated. I had won. As the days passed, it became clear that the end for Carter and Associates was imminent. The company's downfall was a slow, agonizing collapse. Clients were jumping ship, employees were resigning one by one, and the once proud empire Richard had built was now nothing more than a house of cards. I had done what I set out to do. I had taken my power back. Not just from the company, but from everyone who had ever underestimated me. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was Lawrence. I knew what was coming. But hearing his voice, strained and desperate, was still a bitter reminder of everything I had endured. Tessa, we need to talk, he said. The company, it's falling apart. I need you back. We can fix this. I laughed bitterly, the sound of it cold and sharp. Fix it? You threw me away like I was nothing. Now you want me to save you? I was wrong. Tessa, he pleaded, his voice cracking. I need you. The company needs you. I shook my head, a smile tugging at my lips. No, Lawrence, I built your empire, and now it's time for it to burn. I won't go back to a place where I wasn't valued. With that, I ended the call. The weight that had settled on my chest for so long lifted. And for the first time in years, I felt free. As I stood in my new office, overlooking the city skyline, I knew that this was just the beginning. I had created something bigger than Carter and Associates, Cole and Carter Consulting. I had done it on my terms. And it was thriving. This wasn't just revenge. This was victory. Thank you for following Emily's journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Life Stories channel to stay updated with more videos. See you in the next one.